A foul smell filled the air, thick and sour, as Toby walked briskly along a lonely path with a bundle of firewood on his shoulder. The stench forced him to slow his steps. He instinctively held his nose shut as he looked around, searching for the source of the terrible smell. Then he saw something that shocked him. Before we continue with the story, please like this video, comment, share, and subscribe. Toby's mother had sent him to the outskirts of the village to fetch firewood before nightfall, and he had taken his usual shortcut, a lonely path that only a few people dared to walk once the sun began to set. There were rumors of strange creatures appearing along the path, most of them with evil intentions. But Toby had never seen anything strange or abnormal in all his years of taking the path. However, today, something was different. The smell of something filled the air. Even as he blocked his nose, he could still perceive it. As he scanned around to find the source of the smell, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw an old man slumped under a large baobab tree by the roadside, his body barely more than skin and bones. His clothes were nothing but rags, hanging loosely off his slender frame. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, his sunken eyes staring blankly at Toby. His hands trembled as he clutched his empty belly. "Please, give me some food." The man's voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and dry like cracked wood. Toby froze. He had never seen this man before. Was he from another village? How long had he been lying there? Questions filled his mind, but he quickly realized that none of them mattered. What mattered was that this man was starving. A group of villagers approached from the other side of the path, chattering loudly as they walked briskly along the path. As they neared, the foul smell reached them, and they recoiled in disgust. "Ah! Who is this stinking man?" one of them muttered, pulling his wrapper over his nose. "Must be a madman," another said. "Or a beggar from a cursed land. Let's go before our bellies explode from this terrible smell." They hurried past without another glance, spitting and retching as they faded into the distance. Toby observed them until he could no longer see them, and then he looked back at the old man, who had closed his eyes as he struggled to breathe. For a brief moment, Toby doubted his instinct to help the old man. He had only a few coins left in his pocket, the money his mother had given him to buy rice for the house. If he spent it on this man, what would they eat? He exhaled sharply. "What kind of person would I be if I walked away?" Dropping his bundle of firewood to the ground, he sprinted towards the village market. His feet moved swiftly along the dirt path as he made his way to Mama Grace's roadside stall, where she sold roasted yams and palm oil. "Auntie, please give me 2 pieces of yam and some palm oil," Toby panted, fishing out the last of his money. Mama Grace, a plump woman with a kind face, raised an eyebrow. "Toby, you were supposed to buy rice. Why are you buying yam?" "It's for someone who needs it more," he said simply. She stared at him for a moment, then sighed and handed him the food. "Take it, my boy. And may the gods bless you." Toby grabbed the food and rushed back the way he had come. His heart was beating rapidly, not just from running but from the urgency of the moment. He reached the baobab tree and knelt beside the old man, trying his best to ignore the smell. "Here, Baba, I brought some food for you. Sit up and eat." The man's eyes fluttered open, dull and weak, as he stared at the food in Toby's hands. A single tear slid down his cheek as he sat up. With shaky fingers, he took the yam and bit into it hungrily. He chewed slowly at first, then faster, as if afraid that the food might disappear. Toby sat in silence, watching as the man devoured every bite. When he was done, the old man wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and let out a deep sigh. He turned to Toby, his tired eyes filled with something the boy couldn't quite name. "You are the only one who stopped," the old man said. "The only one who saw me and did not turn away." Toby shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone should do." The man chuckled, low and raspy. "No, boy. You did what only a few would do." A heavy silence settled between them, and then, without warning, the old man reached into the folds of his tattered robe and pulled out something small. It was a drum. Not a large, ceremonial drum like the ones played during village festivals, but a small, strange-looking drum. Its surface was smooth, yet it seemed ancient, covered in tiny carvings that glowed faintly in the fading sunlight. "I am indebted to you for what you've done for me. Now, I must repay you for your kindness," the old man said, pressing the drum into Toby's hands. "Take this. Whenever you are in need and have nowhere else to turn, beat the drum and think of what you want, and it will provide." Toby blinked. "What do you mean?" "You will see in time," the old man said as he smiled mysteriously. Then, suddenly, the man stood up. And before Toby could utter another word, a strong gust of wind swept through the path, carrying the old man with it. One moment, he was there. The next, he had vanished into thin air. Toby fell on his backside, his heart thudding in his chest from the scene he had just witnessed. What had just happened? Had the old man really vanished? Or had he imagined it? A shiver ran down his spine. He had heard about several mysterious encounters from fellow villagers, but this was the first time he believed they were real. When he regained his composure, he stared at the drum, feeling the cool, smooth surface under his fingertips. Whatever the case, one thing was certain: this was no ordinary drum. And somehow, Toby knew that his life would never be the same again. As he walked home in a daze, he clutched the small drum tightly in his hands. His mind spun with questions. Who was that old man? How had he disappeared like that? And most importantly, what kind of drum had he just been given? By the time he reached his compound, the sky had darkened to a deep blue, and the evening breeze had turned cool. The scent of simmering pepper stew drifted through the air as he stepped into the small mud house where he lived with his mother. "Toby, is that you?" His mother's voice called from inside. "Yes, Mama," he answered, setting his bundle of firewood against the wall before stepping into the room. His mother, a strong woman with tired eyes, sat by the fire stirring the stew. The flickering flames cast shadows across her face, highlighting the lines of worry that had deepened over the years. Life had not been easy since his father passed away, and every day was a battle to put food on the table. "Where is the rice I sent you to buy?" she asked, glancing at him. Toby hesitated, his fingers tightening around the drum behind his back. I used the money to buy food for a starving old man I found on the road," he admitted. His mother stopped stirring. Slowly, she turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "You did what?" "He was dying, Mama," Toby explained. "No one else would help him. I couldn't just walk away." A heavy silence filled the room. His mother studied him for a long moment before sighing. She reached for a wooden stool and sat down, rubbing her head. "Toby, I raised you to be kind, but not at your own expense. Kindness does not fill an empty stomach." "I know, Mama," he said softly. "But if I were the one starving, I would want someone to help me too." His mother exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "And now we have nothing to eat for dinner." Toby's stomach twisted with guilt. He had known this would happen, but he had made his choice. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll wake up early and go to the farm tomorrow," he promised. "I'll bring home some cassava, and we won't go hungry." His mother sighed again but said nothing more. Instead, she dipped a wooden spoon into the pot and scooped a piece of meat into a plate for him. "Eat," she murmured. "You'll need your strength." Toby nodded and sat down to eat. As he lifted the meat to his mouth, his mind drifted back to the old man. "You will see in time," the man had said. But what did that mean? His gaze dropped to the small drum resting beside him. Something about it felt different. But for now, he would keep it hidden. The next morning, Toby woke before dawn and set out for the farm as promised. He spent hours harvesting cassava, his hands working swiftly to dig up the thick roots from the dry soil. By the time he returned home, sweat drenched his back, and his arms ached from the labor. But he was satisfied. When she saw the cassava, his mother smiled for the first time in days. "You are a good boy, Toby," she said, patting his shoulder. That evening, as they pounded the cassava into fufu, Toby's thoughts wandered back to the drum. He had hidden it carefully in a small wooden box under his sleeping bed. He hadn't dared to touch it since the night before, but a strange curiosity plagued his mind. What if it really was magical? What if it could do something extraordinary? But as much as he wanted to test it, he knew it wasn't the right time. His mother was already upset about the money he had spent. If she saw him playing with a drum instead of helping around the house, she would scold him for wasting time. So he decided to wait. Days passed, then weeks. Life continued as usual. Toby worked on the farm, helped his mother, and occasionally carved small wooden figures to sell in the village square. The drum remained hidden, untouched, a secret that only he knew. And then, everything changed. Many months after his encounter with the old man, disaster struck. The entire village of Cape Villa found itself in the grip of a famine. Food became more precious than gold. The market stalls, once overflowing with yams, maize, and vegetables, now stood nearly empty. Families rationed their meals, stretching small portions for as long as they could. Toby and his mother were no exception. One evening, as he sat outside their home staring at the cloudless sky, he heard his mother sigh heavily. She sat on a stool, her hands resting on her lap, her face weary. "There's nothing left to cook," she murmured. Toby's face wrinkled with a frown. He had seen his mother struggle before, but never like this. Never with such helplessness in her eyes. "Mama, I'll find a way," he promised. But deep down, he didn't know how. That night, as he lay on his sleeping bed, hunger swam around in his empty belly so much that he couldn't sleep. Suddenly, his mind drifted back to the drum. The old man's words replayed in his mind: "Whenever you are in need, beat the drum, and it will provide." Toby's breath caught in his throat. Could it be? Had the old man given him a gift that could save them? His heartbeat increased rapidly as he slowly sat up, his hands trembling slightly. He reached under his bed and pulled out the wooden box. Inside, the small drum rested, untouched for months but still as mysterious as ever. Toby lifted it from the box carefully. The carvings on its surface seemed to shimmer faintly in the dimly lit room. He hesitated for only a second before gripping it firmly in both hands. Then, with a deep breath, he raised his hands and struck the drum once. The moment his hands struck the drum, a deep, rich sound echoed through the room, vibrating through the air like a distant thunderclap. And in that instant, the air shifted. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, before his very eyes, the impossible unfolded. A large, steaming clay pot appeared in the center of the room, sitting atop a wooden tray. The aroma that filled the air was intoxicating: spiced jollof rice, sizzling fried plantains, roasted fish, and a bowl of freshly pounded yam with rich, steaming egusi soup. Toby's eyes widened in disbelief. His legs shook as he stumbled backward, his mind struggling to make sense of what had just happened. This was not a dream. This was real. The drum, the old man's gift, was truly magical. For a long moment, he simply stared at the feast before him, his stomach growling loudly, breaking the heavy silence in the room. His mouth watered as the rich aroma of the food wrapped around him, teasing his senses. Then, he did what any hungry 17-year-old boy would do. He lunged forward and grabbed a plate. With shaky hands, he scooped a generous portion of the jollof rice, stuffing a spoonful into his mouth. The taste exploded on his tongue, flavors so rich, so perfect, that he almost moaned in delight. He grabbed a piece of roasted fish next, tearing into the tender, spiced flesh. It was the best meal he had ever tasted. Then he remembered his mother. His mother was sleeping in the next room, hungry, just like he had been. She needed to see this. Toby hesitated for only a second before grabbing another plate. He piled food onto it: rice, plantains, and fish. His hands moved quickly as he carried it to his mother's room. "Mama," he whispered urgently, nudging her shoulder. She stirred slightly, groaning in protest. "Toby, it's late. What is it?" "Mama, wake up," he urged. "You need to see this." Her eyes cracked open, filled with exhaustion. "See what?" "I found food," Toby blurted out. At that, her eyes snapped open. Food. Yes. Come and eat. Her brows furrowed in confusion, but the hunger tearing at her belly was stronger than her doubts. Slowly, she sat up, staring at the plate in Toby's hands. Where did you get this? She asked, gazing at him suspiciously. Toby hesitated. He couldn't tell her about the drum. Not yet. She might not believe him, or worse, she might think it was something evil. I found someone willing to share, he lied, forcing a smile. His mother's eyes searched his face for a long moment. Then, with a tired sigh, she took the plate. She lifted a spoonful of rice to her mouth, chewing slowly. The moment the flavors hit her tongue, her expression changed. Her eyes widened, and she looked up at Toby, stunned. Toby, this is the best meal I have ever eaten in my life. Toby grinned. Eat, Mama. There's more. His mother didn't need any more convincing. She ate hungrily, savoring every bite, her earlier suspicion momentarily forgotten. As she ate, Toby's mind raced. This drum could provide food. That meant they would never go hungry again. And if it could provide food, what else could it do? Over the next few nights, Toby experimented with the drum. Each night, when his mother had gone to sleep, he would pull it out from its hiding place and beat it softly, making a request in his mind. And every time, the drum delivered. Freshly baked bread, boiled yams with egg sauce, a steaming pot of goat meat pepper soup, juicy mangoes and pineapples. Anything he desired, the drum provided. The first few nights, he only asked for food. But soon, an idea began to form in his mind, one that both excited and terrified him. If he could keep summoning food, he could sell it. He could become rich. But he had to be careful. If anyone found out the truth, they might try to take the drum from him. He couldn't let that happen. So, he came up with a plan. The next day, he took a small basket of food to the village market. He set up a small stall, acting as though he had gotten the food from a generous farmer. People were skeptical at first, but when they tasted the food, everything changed. Villagers flocked to him, marveling at the rich flavors. They couldn't believe someone still had such good food in the middle of a famine. Within an hour, everything was sold out. Toby returned home with more money in his hands than he had ever held before. And that was only the beginning. Every night, he beat the drum. Every morning, he sold the food. And soon, the boy who once had nothing became a wealthy food seller in the village. But Toby had yet to learn one important lesson. Magic always comes with a price. And his was coming. If you've enjoyed this story so far, please like, share, and subscribe. Toby's name was on everyone's lips. At first, it was whispers in the market. Have you noticed? That boy never seems to go hungry. Even during this famine, he and his mother look well fed. And he's selling food every day. Where is he getting it from? Then the whispers turned into murmurs. Then murmurs into questions. And questions into suspicion. Toby tried to ignore it. He had been careful, only summoning what he and his mother needed to eat and sell. But as the famine dragged on, the desperation of the villagers grew. Hunger had a way of making people notice things they would normally ignore. One evening, as he walked home from the market with a bag of coins tied to his waist, a group of young men stood in his path. Their eyes, sunken from hunger, burned with curiosity, and something else. Greed. Hey, Toby, one of them called out, a forced smile on his face. Business seems to be going well for you. Toby gripped his bag tighter. I just work hard, that's all. The tallest of the group, a sharp-jawed man named Kenny, took a step closer. Hard work? In a famine? He chuckled, shaking his head. Come on, we all know food doesn't fall from the sky. Where are you getting it? Toby forced a laugh. I just had extra savings before the famine started. That's how I'm surviving. Kenny exchanged looks with the others. Is that so? His voice was calm, but his eyes glimmered with doubt. Toby pushed past them, scared and shaken. He could feel their eyes boring into his back as he walked away. They were onto him, and he had to be more careful. That night, Toby moved the drum. It was no longer safe to keep it under his bed. The small storage room behind his hut was not secure either. If anyone suspected him enough to search his home, he couldn't afford to let them find it. He wrapped the drum in a thick cloth and slipped into the night, his bare feet silent against the dusty ground. He needed a place no one would think to look. The riverbed. The famine had dried up the river months ago, leaving behind a hollow stretch of land filled with scattered stones and hardened soil. Under the cover of darkness, Toby dug a hole near an old, twisted tree stump and buried the drum. As he covered the hole, he exhaled in relief. Now, even if someone searched his home, they wouldn't find anything. But he still had to be careful. Over the next week, Toby changed his routine. Instead of selling large amounts of food, he sold just enough to avoid suspicion. Instead of eating openly, he and his mother ate in private, ensuring no one saw how well-fed they were. But no matter how careful he was, the rumors didn't stop. And soon, they reached the wrong ears. One evening, as Toby was returning from the market, he heard his name. "Lad, come here." Toby turned and felt his breath hitch. It was the village chief. Chief Rocky was a broad-shouldered man with a voice that could command silence with a single word. Even in his old age, he carried himself with the authority of a warrior. Behind him stood several elders, their expressions unreadable. "Yes, my chief," Toby said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "I hear you have been selling food," Chief Rocky said, his piercing eyes fixed on him. "More food than anyone else in this village. Even in this famine, you have not known hunger. Tell me, Toby, where is your supply?" Toby's heart skipped a beat, but he had prepared for this. "My family had extra savings before the famine," he said. "I used the money to buy food before it ran out in the market." The chief was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the elders. And yet no one saw him buying in large quantities before the famine began. One of the elders, a grey-bearded man named Papa Don, shook his head. "No, my chief. Even the traders do not recall selling to him in such amounts." Chief Rocky's gaze darkened. "Then we must investigate." He turned back to Toby. "By sunrise, we will search your home." Toby's heart nearly stopped. A search? He forced himself to remain calm. The drum was no longer in his house. They wouldn't find anything. But something in the chief's eyes made his stomach churn. They wouldn't stop at just his home. That night, Toby couldn't sleep. His mother sat beside him, worry etched into her face. "What will you do, my son?" she whispered. Toby clenched his fists. "I need to move the drum again. If they don't find anything at home, they'll search the village. I need to hide it somewhere no one will ever find it." His mother hesitated. "Are you sure this is wise? Maybe it's time to tell the truth." Toby looked at her, his jaw tightening. "If I tell them, they'll take it from me." His mother sighed, her fingers pressing against her temples. "Toby, you have been blessed with something powerful. But secrecy is not the way to go in this case. You must tell the chief the truth before it's too late." Toby didn't reply. He couldn't afford to think about what would happen if the drum was taken from him. He wasn't ready to reveal his secret either. He had to protect it. As soon as the village was quiet, he slipped out into the night, making his way to the riverbed. The moon was high, casting pale light over the dry land. But as he approached the tree stump, his blood ran cold. The soil had been disturbed. The drum was gone. Panic seized him. He dropped to his knees, digging frantically, but there was nothing. Someone had found it. A rustling sound made him spin around. A figure stepped into the moonlight. Kenny. Behind him stood the same group of young men from the market, their faces filled with triumph. "So," Kenny said, crossing his arms, "this is your secret." Toby's chest tightened. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Kenny smirked, holding up the small drum. "We saw you hiding something last time. We waited, followed you, and now..." He ran his fingers over the drum's surface. "This little thing has been feeding you, hasn't it?" Toby lunged forward, but one of the men grabbed him, shoving him back. "You've been keeping food to yourself while the rest of us suffer," another sneered. "You think that's fair?" Toby's mind raced. "You don't understand," he said quickly. "The drum, it only works for me. If you try to use it..." Kenny let out a dry laugh. "We'll see about that." He raised his hand and struck the drum. Thrum. A deep, vibrating sound filled the air. And then... nothing. Kenny frowned. He struck it again. Silence. A flicker of doubt crossed his face. "Maybe I'm doing it wrong." Suddenly, a tear appeared on the drum's surface. Toby's breath caught. "No." Kenny took a step back as the crack deepened. With a final, hollow sound, the drum shattered into pieces. The magic was gone. And so was Toby's secret. A heavy silence fell over the group. Toby stared at the shattered pieces of the drum, his breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. It was over. The magic was gone. Kenny and his friends stepped back, their triumphant smirks fading into confusion. One of them nudged the broken drum with his foot. "What just happened?" Kenny clenched his jaw. "This thing was supposed to give us food." He shot a glare at Toby. "You tricked us, didn't you?" Toby's voice was hoarse. "I told you, it only worked for me." Kenny's hands balled into fists. "You're lying. You were hiding something powerful, and now it's useless." His frustration boiled over, and he kicked the broken pieces into the dirt. "We should have just taken the food from him instead." Toby took a step back. His heart pounded as the boys advanced on him, but before anyone could make a move, a deep voice cut through the night. "Enough." Everyone froze. Chief Rocky stood at the edge of the dried riverbed, flanked by two of the village elders. Their expressions were grim. Toby's stomach twisted. How much had they seen? The chief stepped forward, his sharp eyes sweeping over the broken drum, then landing on Toby. So, the rumors were true. Toby looked sad. He had no excuse left. No lie could save him now. "Yes," he said quietly. "I had a magic drum." A murmur passed between the elders, but Chief Rocky remained silent. He studied Toby for a long moment before turning to Kenny and the others. "And you," he said, his voice laced with disappointment. "You let greed drive you to destruction. Instead of seeking understanding, you acted on selfishness. And now, because of it, the magical drum is gone." Kenny opened his mouth to protest, but the chief raised a hand. "Not another word." His gaze shifted back to Toby. "Tell me everything, boy." Toby took a deep breath. He told them about the stinking old man on the lonely path, how he had fed him, and how, in return, the man had gifted him the drum. He explained how he had used it sparingly, how he had hidden it to protect it from those who might misuse its power. When he finished, the chief exhaled heavily. This was a blessing given in kindness. And instead of honoring it, greed and secrecy have led to its destruction. He shook his head. Toby looked down, regret burning in his chest. I didn't want anyone to take it from me." The chief nodded slowly. "And yet, had you trusted your people, perhaps together we could have used it wisely. But that is a lesson learned too late. There's nothing else to see here. Everyone should return to their homes. I don't want to hear of any trouble from any of you again, is that clear?" Chief Rocky commanded. Toby nodded sheepishly as he turned and went back home dejected. But the moment he sneaked back into his room, a small object was waiting for him on the bed. The carvings on the surface of the object seemed to shimmer faintly in the dimly lit room. As he moved closer to inspect the object, Toby's eyes widened as he finally realized what it was. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next video.